Hello, everyone. I'm welcoming you to the quick starter of romantic or some rare lines. And I advise you to start learning and studying repertoire with this quick starter and with these lines, since it's pretty important to build the knowledge of how black can become better in which positions. That, for example, if white is playing dubiously, how we can gain an advantage. And then once you have this knowledge, it's easier to use it also in the other chapters and the other more interesting and more solid openings. So yeah, of course, our course is 1e45, so that's how we go. So white is going with the central pawn with a king's pawn to e4, and we're replying with the same move, e5. Basically, we're also challenging white in the fight for the center. We are not giving an opportunity for white to build in the center. And yeah, the moves which we're going to look are pretty much, yeah, the queen h5 is possible with immediate attack on f7, the bishop comes to c4, which is a bishop's opening, the king's gambit, the center game or Danish gambit, the Posiani opening, the Vienna game gambit. So let's start. And we're beginning with the queen h5 move. So white is going for e4, king's pawn move, e5 is replied, and queen h5, immediately breaking all the principles from the opening. Okay, not all, but the main one, not to develop the queen too early. But of course, this move has a straight idea to challenge us and checkmate as fast as possible on f7. So of course, the other point is that e5 pawn is hanging, so we have to play knight c6 to defend the pawn. And after bishop c4, we're actually very close to losing if we're not playing the correct move here, which is g6. So we're first of all stopping the checkmate idea, attacking the queen from h5. It goes back to f3 again, still wants to checkmate us, but then after knight f6, we're stopping this opportunity from white, and we're introducing other threats like bringing the knight to d4 and attacking the queen as well as the pawn on c2. So here there are a few moves which white can try. For example, if white is being very persistent and still wants to take the pawn on f7, at least with the bishop, here actually after knight d4, white is getting in the big trouble because it's very difficult to find a square for the queen. And if white wants to still take a pawn on f7 after king e7, there are unfortunately too many pieces under attack. So after queen c4, we play b5, again challenging the queen. And basically here we are going to win material. In case of knight coming to e2, basically one of the main moves, or like objectively definitely better and more common, white wants to stop the idea of knight coming to d4. Here we go already for knight a5 with the idea of simply just taking the bishop. We want to trade the bishop for a knight. The bishop on c4 is normally a very good piece, so trading our knight for the bishop is a good idea. So bishop b3. Okay, of course, if white doesn't want to trade, they would have to play bishop d3, but it's very dubious and very bad position for the bishop. So bishop b3 played, we take the bishop, a pawn takes, and now d5. We are already ready to go for d5. d5 generally is the move which we are trying to play in many different openings, and here as well. If we can, and we can go for it, then we can do it, especially right now because we have a bishop pair and the open center is something what we are aiming for. Case of c3 here, white is also stopping our move of knight d4. We're going for bishop g7, finishing the development and ready to castle. d3 is a normal move, ready to develop the bishop from c1. And here after knight f5, again, we are challenging the bishop so that it doesn't get to the good squares and it's not putting pressure on our f7 pawn, since the bishop, the light squared bishop of white is normally good on the a2 g8 diagonal. So now bishop goes to b5. Now there is no real issue. But the other thing is that we cannot really go for d5 here. So we castle and we prepare move d5 because there was a king pinned. The pawn was pinned to the king, and yeah, d4 now is possible. In case white goes for knight e2, we go forward with a d5 pawn, and yeah, basically we already have a lead in the development and great position. Bishop g5, white is trying to pin our knight and create some pressure. Here we go for h6. Generally, when bishop is appearing on g5, normally we always want to ask a question to the bishop. Bishop goes back to h4, and here we're going for g5 immediately, since we can follow up it with d5 move. Even though it feels like we're sacrificing a pawn, but after c6, challenging the other bishop, we take on e4, takes, and after knight c4, we're attacking both the bishop and the pawn on b2. So bishop has to take on c6, on f6, not to lose the pawn on b2. So after a few trades, b4 is played, but here there is an a5 with an idea of opening our rook from the a8. And yeah, we have a very great position, and we are actually winning. All right. So we are moving forward to the Danish gambit, which starts with the move e4, e5, d4. It can also be a center game. We're going to discuss about it later. So take, and we're taking on d4 because, of course, we cannot really reply other way if we want to still keep advantage in the, or not keep advantage, but keep fighting for the center. Since after take, if queen takes on d4, we can reply with a knight c6 and attacking the queen. But c3 is a Danish gambit. White wants us to take on c3 and help them to develop, but we don't do it. We go for d5. We decline the gambit, and we strike with a d5 move, which already brings zero problem for black. So after queen takes on d4, we go for knight f6, defending the pawn on d5, and we are already ready to finish the development with knight c6. If pawn takes on d5, then we are taking with the queen. We shouldn't be afraid of trading queens, because even though this position looks very symmetrical, due to this c3 move, our position is actually slightly better, because there could be issues with a d3 square. But generally, of course, it's equal position, but anything can happen. Equal position is not equal draw. So after e5, which is actually a very common move in online games, it's just pretty bad, because after knight e5, now there is a huge threat of bishop c5 coming into the position. Bishop s3, now bishop c5, queen d3, and knight c6. And basically, we're just having a great position. Pawn on e5 is weakness. c4 cannot really be played, or can be tried, but okay, there is queen h4, and white has issues. Our knight on e4 is just a brilliant piece. So yeah, definitely big problems for white, and we are clearly better. Bishop g5 is the most common choice for white in this position. Of course, main idea is to pin our knight and to create a pressure on the d5 pawn. Here we go for a knight bd7. Basically, we again want to take the pawn on e4 with the pawn. And in case white takes on d5 and releasing the pressure, we have bishop c5 again, as knight from d7 was helping. Bishop c5, we're targeting the queen. And after bishop takes on f6, we take on f6 with a queen. Not afraid to trade the queens. One actually of the thematic ideas from our repertoire, that we are not afraid to trade the queens, even if we are down material, because in this position we're going to take on d5, or there is going to be a problem on f2 after this move, so it's not really that problematic. And we're just going to regain the missing pawn. So e5, it's very ambitious, but it's not enough, because there are simply not enough pieces for white to defend the pawn and to support this ambition. So we go for bishop c5, very strong move, targeting the queen. Queen goes to f4, putting more pressure to f6 square, but here after queen e7, we are pinning the pawn, so pawn cannot take our knight. Knight f3, now h6, asking question to the bishop, and after bishop takes, we recapture with the pawn, and we are ready to take on e5 with the pawn. Okay, so bishop takes on f6, then we are taking with the pawn as well, and after queen takes on d5, c6, kicking out the queen, and after queen e7, we have the same idea of taking on e5. In this case, we would take with a knight to develop our queen from c8 as fast as possible, and then we would long castle. So that was the first one from Danish Gambit. The second variation is after white takes on d5. It is by far the main move, and yeah, basically the move which is aggressive players are choosing. We take on d5 with the queen, and after cd we're rising at the position with the isolated queen's pawn. Now knight c6 we're attacking and developing at the same time. Knight f3 just defending the pawn on d4, bishop g4. Now we are now we're pinning the knight, and we are creating threats already to take on d4 ourselves. In case of knight c3, we're going for bishop b4, not letting our queen be taken or kicked from d5. And after bishop e2, we take on f3. Very actually important, first to take here, then play queen c4, since now we're stopping white from castling short and creating a problem on c3, so that if bishop comes to e2, we can just take on c3 and win a material. In case of bishop e2 here, we're going for bishop b4, because if we will take on f3 here, after queen f3, queen d4, we're going to lose to bishop c6, because our queen is gone, and this is a check. So that's why we have to be really careful. We cannot really regain the pawn so quickly. So bishop b4, first we're asking the king a question. Knight c3, stopping the check very logically, but of course it's still a pin. And then after bishop takes on f3, basically we're just also putting more pressure on d4, and this removes any like aggressive opportunities for white. And here after queen c4 again, we're getting into the same position, and basically just cannot we don't give white opportunity to castle, and we're attacking the knight on c3. So the next one is a center gambit. So here we have a starting position of the center gambit. So the center game is when queen takes, and the center gambit is when white is not recapturing by playing bishop c4. It's not so bad, but we can also transpose to some other openings. Here we play knight c6. The good way would be to try to punish it by playing knight f6, but we're going the knight c6. Here, for example, in case of knight f3, we would just transpose to the Scotch. And in case of c3, we would play knight f6. And now, yeah, we're attacking also a pawn on e5, and white has to make some decisions. After cd, we take on e5, on e4 with a knight, and already have threats of playing something like d5, defending our knight. But here, bishop f7, an interesting try, ambitious try from white, but it doesn't really work, because after king f7, queen h5, g6, queen d5, king d7, queen takes on e5. After bishop b4, the rook is coming to e8 with a huge power, and even if king goes away after rook e8, we have threats of rook coming to e1, and it's going to be almost a checkmate, or a lot of material is going to be gone. So the next position, we're going to discuss the center game. So this is when white is recapturing on d4 with the queen. But let's say in case of knight f3 in this position, it just doesn't bring any independent value in this chapter, because after knight c6, we'll transpose to the Scotch game. So let's start queen d4. This is the starting position of the center game. White is achieving like the advantage in the center due to the pawn on e4, but the queen is early went into the game, so we can immediately challenge it by playing knight c6. And yeah, now queen has some options to go. For example, if queen goes to d3, it's a rather rare move, but the point is that it's not closing the bishop from c1. Like in the main line with queen e3. So here we go for d5 immediately. We're using the fact that the queen and the pawn can be later challenged by our knight from b4. So here after ed5, knight b4, queen e2, queen e7, we're just going to easily retake the pawn on d5 without any issues. In case of queen a4, now we're getting to the kind of position which reminds me the reverse Scandinavian, where queen is on a4, in the Scandinavian on a5, and well, the only difference is the pawn on e5 and on e4. And in Scandinavian, this pawn is actually normally placed on e6 or e3 in this case, because we will always have the bishop c5 opportunity of targeting the pawn on f2. So that's why pawn o3, of course, would be better. And that's why bishop c5, we're going for it. Knight f3, and now d6. Basically, we're just going to finish the development like normal moves, and also stopping some e5 ideas. Bishop g5, immediately challenging our queen, and here very important, we're going for knight g7 with the idea of later challenge the bishop of white with f6. Okay, first we would like to castle, and then we want to challenge it, obviously. In case of knight c3, we go for knight g7. This is the main idea again, so that if case bishop g5 is coming, we will always have f6 move. So bishop e2 is the other developing move. Now we castle a6 with the idea of kicking the queen and even trapping it, because for now, if it was our turn, we would trap the queen. So queen comes to c4, and now we play bishop g4, and basically all our pieces finish the development. We are ready to bring our king to h8 to prepare the f5 push. Our knight could go to g6, queen could go to d7, and we could bring the rook to the e file, putting pressure on the pawn on e4. So yeah, definitely we have a slight advantage, an easier position to play as black. What about the other move for the queen? Not only queen a4 or queen d3, but also queen c4. It's pretty similar to the queen d3 line, which we're going to discuss in a moment. So yeah, basically on c4, it's a little bit located pretty strangely, because it feels like the c4 square for the bishop. But okay, white is trying it, so now we go knight f6, just developing, and we already threatened to go for the d5, all in, breaking the center. Knight c3, pretty much the only move that stops d5, so here we go bishop b4, immediately pinning the knight on c3. And after bishop d2, we're just continuing the fight. Here, after castle, long castle, a5, we're supporting the bishop. Basically here, the two main moves, instead of a5, are d6 and rook e8. But we start with a5, because first we want to challenge the queen, and we want to see where the queen goes. And depending on where queen goes, we will decide either we go d6 or a rook e8. So f3 is played, defending the pawn on e5, and ready to march with g pawn against our king. Very logical. Here we go knight e5, attacking the queen on c4, and now basically we will see what we're going to do next. Queen goes to d4, so now we can see we can play d6. So now rook e8 would not make any sense, because the pawn on e4 is defended well, and there is no queen on e2. So yeah, we just basically spared time with this move. And in case of queen e2, now we understand that we can play rook e8, and we don't need to spend time on the d6 move, since we can play it in some lines d5 move straight away. So yeah, that's why it's very important that we have this move, which is stopping us from wasting more time. So f4, asking our knight where does it want to go, but it's a little bit too ambitious, because the pawns are going to get weaker and weaker. So we go knight g6. Now we're targeting both pawns with the knight, and after e5, we're going for d6, immediately asking question to the pawn. And actually, it's very tough to defend it. So knight f3, the only move. Now de, pawn takes, and bishop g4. We're pinning the knight, which is defending the pawn, and we're just going to grab the pawn most likely in the next moves. In case of queen f2, queen is getting removed from our x-ray with a rook. Now we go for c6. Now we still want to go for d5, but now we couldn't go for d5 straight away, so we have to support it with c6. In case of g4, so white is going for the all-in attack on the queen side. Now we ready to strike in the center. So that's how you reply to the attack on the side. You're replying it with attack in the center. So d5, g5, attacking our knights, and here we have an intermediate move d4, attacking the knight on c3. So knight jumps back to e2, and now d3, another attack of the knight. This knight cannot really escape, so white finally takes on f6. We take on e2, knight e2, and now queen f6. And basically, what just happened, this dangerous g-pawn got removed, so there is no issue. We have actually no weaknesses on the king side, and we can start attack against the white's king on the queen side while playing while bringing the pieces. The bishop to e6 could come as well, targeting the a2 pawn. Okay, we will just see. We will start attack. We can play b5, b4, a3, and so on, and to weaken this diagonal where our queen is located. But yeah, the position of black is very promising. So now we're moving to the center game move queen e3. It's the most common reply and the main move. So basically now the square on c4 is free for the bishop, and most of the time queen wants to go to g3. Okay, one disadvantage of this move is obviously that the queen is located on the e file where potentially our rook could be. So okay, knight f6, we are developing, we're continuing the development, also somewhat preparing the d5 line. And here, if white goes for e5, it's important to know how to react here because, we can get into trouble early on. But since white only move with the queen basically and the pawn, then we can understand we can go ambitiously with knight g4. And now after queen e2, basically white is trying to make us make a blunder because white wants to trick us. Since if we would take on e4, e5, then we would lose our knight after f4. So that's why we have to play d6. First of all, we're defending our knight, and secondly, we're creating our own kind of trick. I cannot say it's a trick, but this is definitely very tempting to play for white. So after e takes d6, we play bishop e6, and now basically we sacrifice the pawn. If white would continue taking after queen c7 and we are ready to long castle, finish the development, our advantage in development is just enormous. So if white goes for knight f3, we just take on d6 and we are again playing long castle, and again still we have a huge advantage in the position even though we are not even down a pawn. In case of f3, white is trying to kick the knight. Now we go knight h6, and now there is no need to sacrifice a piece. So bishop takes on h6, and we have very nice intermediate check, and then we are not spoiling our structure on the king side. ed happens, now bishop e6, the same idea. So basically, yeah, again, we're ahead in the development. We're ready to finish our development and castle in like couple of moves, just developing the bishop and castle. It also depends where, and basically we're just so much better here. In case of h3 attacking our knight, then here is we can already take on e5. The point is that after f4 we have a knight d4 move, and after queen e4 there is a c5 move. Now we're actually letting white to take our knight. So after pawn takes on e5, the problem is here, if we go for bishop f5, we just would be losing mistake, because after bishop b5, king e7, our pawn on b7 is in trouble, and after queen b7 we can resign. So that's why d5 has to be played first to cut the opportunity for queen to go here in this diagonal. And after queen f4, knight c2, checking the king and forking it with the rook. So after king d1, knight e1, we're just getting up to material, and the game is pretty much decided with our active pieces and everything. So it's not so clear. Okay, so now we're moving to this position with knight g4, and here queen e4 is a move. Here we can again take on e5 with the idea after f4 to go d5, challenging the queen. Queen goes back to e3, and now we go d4 again. And in case of queen goes to e2, now we have bishop b4. Basically, every of our move is a tempo, and the next move we're ready to castle short and give up our knight, because we will have a huge activity on the e file against the white's king. So c3, now bishop g4, another tempo attacking the queen, queen d2, and now queen e7. And basically, looking at how many pieces are out for black and how many pieces are standing backwards for white is just amazing, and we can already sacrifice a piece definitely. So fe, now we take the pawn on c3, knight c3, and now rook d8, and all our pieces are playing, and black will win back material or even more than that. Otherwise, white can even be checkmated very soon on d1 square. So in case of queen e4, then we have queen h4 intermediate check, with the idea after g3 to play queen g4 to still keep this pin so that white cannot take the knight on e5. And in case bishop h3 attacking our queen, we have a nice move, queen g6, challenging white to take our queen to trade it, but then our knight would recapture it and then no piece would hang. But after queen e2, we can take the bishop on h3, knight takes, and after queen d4, another threat. We're challenging the queen to get changed, but also exchanged, but also we are attacking the knight on h3 at the same time, so we're not actually losing a piece, but rather keeping an extra pawn. The other position of the center game, here white goes for bishop d2, not going forward with e5. And yeah, pretty solid way to play. Now bishop e7, we're finishing development and getting ready for the d5 push. In case of c4, it's pretty ambitious, but okay, it stops the d5 move. So here we know how to react. So first, finishing development on the king side by castling. Knight c3, and now after knight b4, we are creating already huge threats because we want to also go for c6 and d5, and that's why the knight was not good on c6 now. So after castle, we play now c6, and d5 as the next move is going to happen. So yeah, pretty much we want to fulfill our plan. If knight comes to c3, now d5 is working out pretty nicely after pawn takes, knight e5, knight. If queen g3, if removing the queen, here we can go for knight c4 already because there are some issues with the c2 square. After long castle, there is knight c3, bc, and knight a2 check. So after king b2, there is knight c3 actually a sacrifice. And the point is that bishop cannot really take because rook is hanging. But if king takes, then we're going to have a huge attack on white's king on the queen side. And yeah, it's going to be a decisive attack for sure. In case of knight takes on d5, we take with the queen. And here, if knight comes to f3, it's like normal looking move. But after bishop f5, we're just developing with the tempo, attacking the pawn on c2. And there are actually big problems in protecting this pawn. Also, we are ready to finish the development, either long or short side. And white's king is still in the center. If in case knight goes to f2, first of all, it's stopping the bishop's development, but the main idea is to bring the knight to c3 to challenge our queen on d5. So we go bishop f5, and we're just continuing development and attacking the pawn on c2. Here, after knight c3, queen d4, we're offering a trade of the queens, so that in case the queens are traded, our knight on d4 is going to challenge the c2 pawn pretty nicely. And after long castle, just long castle, and position is equal, but white will have to be careful. Our pieces are more active than white's. Now we're again getting to this position of center game. In case of knight c3, which is the main line for white, we go for bishop b4 with the idea of pinning the knight and creating a threat to go for d5 anyway. So after bishop d2, white is neutralizing our threat, our pin. Castle, long castle, basically both sides castled, and we had an opposite castle, so it means the game is going to be exciting. Rook e8 attacking the pawn on e4, and here after f3 we have immediate d5 because of the location of the queen, since our rook is pinning it. So queen comes to f2, and after d4, in case knight takes on e4, we're just taking on e4, fe, and after bishop g4, knight f3, queen f6 is just a great position. For us, we have enormous amount of development, better pawn structure, and white has also the isolated king's pawn here. So yeah, definitely a great position and slight advantage. If white goes for with bishop to g5, pinning our knight, or basically also attacking the queen from the rook on d1. Here we go with a bishop d7. It looks like blunder because after bishop takes on f6, we take on the bishop and we're losing a piece, but actually it's not a blunder, since after bishop takes on c3, pawn takes d3, this pawn is cutting position in half basically, and after queen d1, queen e6, targeting the rook and the pawn on a2, after which we're threatening a checkmate to the king. Yeah, the position is already down for white. So now knight d5, pretty more dangerous approach, and like more dangerous than accepting the piece with bishop f6. But here we have e3 immediately, challenging the queen. Queen has to go away, queen h4, putting all the forces to attack the knight on f6. But after bishop d2, very nice move. We're checking the king, king goes away, and here we have bishop f5. And now we're creating a big pressure, since after knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. Here, very important, we need to play one move and we are all good. queen d6. So we're stopping all the queen h6 ideas, and if queen checks on g6, then there is a bishop g6 stopping the check, and queen h6 there will be queen f8. So that's the most important, that we are not getting checkmate, and then we are putting pressure on the king's queen side, and then we will be the one who will checkmate white. So now we're getting into the position of this position, and here the second most popular move is bishop to c4, stopping the d5 move, and also we cannot really take on d4. So the main idea, if we would try to win the pawn on e4 after queen f4, rook e7, there is just bishop f7, rook f7, and we're just getting complicated position. So we go for d6, just continue development, being ambitious still. We don't want all the trades. f3, and now knight e5. We're attacking the bishop on c4, so it has to move away. Bishop b3, a5. And now in case of a4, we're going c6, basically preparing to sacrifice with a b5 move. And after king b1, b5, we are ready and pushing all forward, a4. The attack is very dangerous against white's king, and for us, the pawns haven't even started marching, so for us it's nothing yet, no danger. So after a3, we go with the bishop to c5. We, of course, don't want to trade our beautiful bishop, so we're attacking the queen on c3, and after queen e1, we go for b5, and again, we are going for an attack on the queen side. The next move should be, or can be, b4 at some moment, so yeah, we're ready for an attack. So the other positions which we're getting, queen g3, which is the main line, immediately putting pressure on our king and the pawn on g7. So here we have knight e4, and we are actually, the series supports this move, so knight e4, rook e4. And here after c3, basically what happens that white wants to bring also the bishop to d3 with a tempo. But here we have a very nice move, bishop e7. The main idea is not only that we are stopping the h4 push, but also that we want to play bishop h4 ourselves. So, for example, after such move as bishop d3, we have bishop h4 tempo attacking the queen, and then the queen, and then rook can go all the way back to e8. For example, after queen e3, rook e8 back, and we're just up a queen, not up a queen, but up a pawn, maybe potentially a queen if the pawn becomes a queen. We are up a pawn in this position without real compensation, so it's clearly better position for black. Now we're moving already to the next opening, which is a bishop's opening. It happens after e4, e5, bishop c4. Basically, the main point of white that they don't want to play all these lines for example, Petrov defense, which arise after knight f3, so they're going for the bishop's opening. And some moment, white could transpose, or we could also transpose together to the Italian game from this chapter. So after knight f6, we're going for an attack on the pawn. Here, if white goes for d4, basically we can just grab it. In case of e5, d5, a very important counterattack, and yeah, basically we are going to follow it up with a knight d4. If white plays c3, trying to play in the gambit style, we already discussed this position in the center gambit. So knight f3, white wants to play the gambit, but we are playing knight c6, and we transpose to the Scotch. Knight c3. In case of knight c3, then not much will happen, because after knight c6, after knight f3, we're going to transpose to Scotch, and in case of d3, I will play bishop b4 here, and also transpose. So, in case of knight f3, white is giving us a pawn. It's actually happens quite a lot in online chess and over the boards, and it's pretty strange that white is giving up a pawn on e4. So we're ready to follow up with d5, defending our knight. So in case of bishop f7, white is trying to be very active and ambitious and aggressive. We take it because we can just hide our king, and we can stay up a piece, so for no reason. And in case white goes with a knight on c3, then practically speaking, okay, we could continue with some interesting lines, but we can just go knight c6, and we can transpose to the Scotch, because after knight takes, we have the d5, and that's discussed there. In case of knight e5, retaking our pawn. Then we go with the d5 with a tempo targeting the bishop. Huge tempo. If knight f7, white tries to sacrifice again, we have a queen e7, and it's basically enough. We're attacking the knight and the bishop at the same time, and huge threat of knight c3 is coming in the position. Bishop b3 coming back with the bishop, it's pretty much the most common move, but it's just giving up the material with queen g5 because knight and the pawn are under attack. If queen comes to a3, attacking our pawn on f7, then we go bishop e6, defending and also developing. And after d4, we go f6, attacking the knight and basically just getting into the forcing endgame where black will just have pair of bishop. So we're taking the bishop, white takes our knight, queen d5, trade happens, and we go back, and basically in the next move we're ready to play knight c6, long castle, maybe put some pressure on d4. Okay, well, most likely white will play c3. And we have a bishop pair advantage in this endgame, which is very comfortable. So bishop c4, knight f6, and now d3 is by far the main move and the best try from white to defend the pawn on e4. We are playing knight c6, and we can actually transpose to some of the Italian game chapter. For example, here if c3 is played, after d5, e d5, knight d5, knight f6, we're just going to get a very good version of the d3, d5 Italian. So with the c3 move, which is not needed at all. So knight c3, this is kind of an independent value of this chapter because again, knight f6 would just transpose to the Italian. So knight c3, we are playing bishop b4 and pinning the knight and want to play for the d5 push. Here in case of bishop g5, which is pretty common but not really dangerous move, here we go h6. Again, we always want to ask the question, once bishop is coming to g5, we ask the question to the bishop, where does it want to go? If bishop goes to h4, we can already here follow up with g5 and immediate d5. So when we see that we can go for d5 and we have to play for g5, we just seriously consider it, and it's actually working out. Pawn takes, knight takes, and there is a big issue on the c3 square right now. So that was bishop g5. In case of bishop d2, basically what's happening is white is breaking the pin, but here we are taking on c3. It's very important to take on c3 right now, because if we are waiting one more move, white will play knight g2, and then this take already will not be happening. So bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, and after castle, we are already getting ready for the d5 push. So in case, for example, a knight f3, we can go for d5 already, since after ed, knight takes, white cannot really capture on e5 since there is going to be issue on the e file. And in case of knight e2, d5, then white would take, knight takes, and after castle, bishop e6. And basically, we're just have a comfortable position, comfortably equal here. So now we're getting into the knight g2 line, pretty much the most common move. And if we're taking on c3, white wants to recapture with a knight, as well as supporting the f4 push later. We go for d5, immediately breaking in the center, since after take, we can just take, and the knight cannot capture due to the pin. So castle happens, now bishop e6, we're defending our knight, and we can see what the difference from the line with the knight on f3, where knight could attack our bishop on e6. So in case of knight d5, it just leads to exchanges, bishop d5, queen d5, and yeah, we just have more comfortable position. Also, knight is a little bit, yeah, strange on e2, so yeah, great position. In case of knight e4, we have castle. If a knight goes to g5 targeting our bishop, we go just bishop g4, and we're pinning this knight. In case white would play at some moment f3, it would just weaken the pawn structure. If knight 2 goes to g3, we place the bishop back. Now there is no reason for the bishop on b4 any longer, and yeah, we're just going to we can either go for f6, but also we can play for f5. Since now we're stopping any knight g5 and bishop g5 ideas, we can already even challenge white's knight on e4. In case of f4, it would not really work just yet, because after knight c3, pawn takes on c3, bishop c5 check, and then we are trading on c4. But after knight takes, we're just playing queen d4 with a check, king h1, bishop c4 dc, and queen c4. f e5, bishop f3, all the trades happen after castle. We can see how awful the pawn structure of white is, and we're going to win the pawn at least for sure. But that was f4. In case of bishop d5, basically it's a surprising move, but it's just has very concrete ideas. So white wants to play for f4 by taking the knight. So bishop takes, and now f4 is working out. So we have to play f6. It's a very strong move, but it's become popular only like in last few years. And the main idea is to stay flexible and still castle long. It could be a very ambitious option in this position. So in case of f5, it's just simply not good, because we're just going to castle long. So this is good against short castle, but we are not forced to short castle. So we play bishop f7, remove the bishop, king h1, and queen d7 with a long castle next. So definitely this was not a good try. And we could actually open the files with g6 ourselves. In case of f takes e5, we take with a knight. In case of d4, knight g6 is the move, and knight is just going to cover the f4 square. And after a trade on d5, there is no tempo with knight f4 any longer. In case knight takes f5, of course, we take with the queen. Here, knight f4 attacking our queen, winning a tempo, queen d7. And after c3, bishop d6, d4, we're long castling, where, of course, in case of the take, there is bishop c5 move, so it's not really working out. Black is doing great. c3, attacking the bishop on b4 immediately, so that we cannot get our ideal setup with queen d7 and then have the bishop on d6. So here we have to have the bishop behind the queen. Now knight f4, attacking our queen, and the queen f7. I mean, it's normal square for a queen. Of course, we would prefer probably the d7 square, but f7 is also fine. d4, now long castle. Again, there is still idea of the bishop coming to c5, queen a4, a6. It's pretty much the last difficult move, not to give up the pawn. And okay, the point is that the knight on e5 is not really hanging, because we will have the check, and after that we will take the pawn, and there will be an issue with the pin on a file. So for example, takes bishop c5, and now this happens. All right, so now we're moving into the Vienna Gambit, and first we will start with the so f4. This is a Vienna Gambit. This is how it starts. Now we go for d5, basically the only good move. We're striking the center. Normally when there is f4 move played in such position, we should consider taking on f4 or taking, sorry. When the f4 move is played, we should consider taking on f4 and then pushing d5, or immediately pushing d5. And this is one of the cases where we cannot take on f4, because there will be intermediate e5 move where we cannot bring anywhere our knight, so we will have issues. So for that reason, we go for d5 instantly. So pawn takes on e5. Now we take with a knight on e4. And now already big threat, queen h4, by the way, knight f3, eliminating that threat. Bishop c5. Now again, we introduce another threat of knight f2 or bishop f2. d4. We basically provoke this d4 move. And now after bishop comes to b4, now we are putting pressure on the knight on c5. And the idea is that after bishop comes to d2, kind of breaking the pin with the threat of knight comes to e4, we have a very nice c5 move in the style of the French defense. First of all, we're defending our bishop on b4 so that this move is not working out any longer. And also we're attacking the pawn on d4, breaking the center with this very nice c5 move. So here a3, white is attacking our bishop on b4. We got a take on c3, and after pawn takes, basically white gets this very nice pawn structure. But we are continuing knight c6, bishop d3, bishop g4. We're just developing, pinning the knight. We're having great minor pieces. We're just developing very nicely. And now after castle, we're going for the very nice move, because here we could say that maybe we are winning the pawn after cd, but problem is after knight d4, knight d4, bishop d1, and after bishop b5, we have to play king f8, and we are just losing. So for that reason, we have to play actually c4, even though we let this pawn structure stay closed and have this kind of very good e5 pawn. The problem is, okay, white cannot really take our knight, so white has to go back with the bishop. And after castle, we realize that actually we arrived at some kind of French pawn structure where the pawn on e6 miraculously moved to the c4, and we will have ideas of attacking the pawn on c3 or also breaking the pawn chain with the f6 move. So yeah, just great French defense, so to say. And the bishop is also out. The other positions after the c5 push, here, in case white takes on e4, in online games it was very popular, but here we just take on e4, bishop takes, pawn takes, and after bishop b5, knight c6, d5, we just take the knight. White is also taking, everyone is taking, and after at the end of the line, this f2 with after king f1 or king f2, the queen b6 will be played, and yeah, that's just going to be game over pretty much. And in case of bishop b5, immediately asking a question, the most popular move here. Now we go knight c6. Castle, castle, and now the threat is, of course, to take the pawn on d4. So white has to do, to clarify the situation on the queen side, we take on c3. In case pawn takes on c3, we have c4, and basically we're forcing to get in the opposite colored bishop endgame later, potentially. But for now, for the game, because for the middle game, where with the opposite colors, the attack is actually much stronger, so we can be pretty happy. In case of bishop c3, then we take on c3. It feels like a bit strange to trade that knight for the bishop, but actually we have the concrete reasons here, because after this we go for c4 again, and after bishop takes, since we are threatening now to trap the bishop again on b5, and after take, we're just having a very good bishop against not so good knight, and yeah, bishop will go to f5. There are also some weaknesses on the dark on the queen side for white, so yeah, just great position, great endgame potentially. The other position. Now we're moving into the Vienna game where queen f3 is played. So this is move which is becoming main line in recent years. Now the main question is what to do with the knight on e4. Knight is being challenged. I mean, there are many moves in this position. There is even like such move as f5. There is of course knight c3. There is knight c6 and so on. But we are going for very rare moves. For the very rare move, bishop e6. The main idea is that we are also playing a gambit. We are letting our opponent take the pawn on e4. And for example, if white is not taking but playing d3, knight c3, bc, and then c5, this position is already pretty difficult for white, because the pawn on e5 is going to be very weak, since white will not be able to defend it so well. And yeah, because of this pawn structure, basically we'll get a better positions. So white has to try to kind of go for the critical line against our line, taking the pawn. And here we have a bishop d5. This is basically a starting position of this variation, attacking the queen and asking questions. So here there are many moves for the queen. For example, if queen goes to g4, this is not really a good square because it can be attacked by the tempo. So knight c6, we are attacking the pawn on e5 now. Bishop c5 is pinning our knight and eliminating this attack. h5, now we're targeting the queen. And after queen g3, basically the queen's only function is to protect the g2 square, but also to defend from h4 squares, from h4 for queen h4 moves. So now h4, queen g4, and now rook h6. We won a lot of tempos. Rook is coming to a g6, very dangerous position for white. After queen a4, white is giving us a check, so knight c6, we're bringing a new piece in the game, and after knight f3, bishop e7, we are already finishing development, white as well, and ready to follow it up by playing d4. But here, that's why it's our turn, we play bishop c5, and we stop the d4 idea. After d4 here, unfortunately, it's not working for white. So after bishop c3, we're even going to take another pawn on e5 in a couple of moves. So after king h1, knight d4, basically we're stopping d5 physically. And again, after knight takes, a queen cannot really capture here, since there is going to be an issue on g2 and the queen will be trapped. So here the other variations. So in this position after bishop d5, Queen can come to e3. This is also possible, basically protecting the pawn on e5, but the only problem that queen is not stopping our move queen h4. After queen e2, basically we can already trade the queens and get into the endgame, where even though we're down a pawn, we're going to regain material very, very soon. Also, pawn on c2 is hanging, pawn on e5 is hanging, and we have a pretty much late in the development, so it's great endgame for us. But after queen g3, we could already trade the queens, but it's better to go for queen e4, knight e2, and here knight c6. White cannot really keep the extra pawn, and yeah, basically, what the only thing we have to avoid to take on c2, since after knight c3, our queen can be trapped by bishop d3. So yeah, we have to be a bit careful. In case of queen f4, also it's looks like a best square. It defends the pawn on e5. It stops queen h4, and also it's not on the way of the knight on f3. So knight c6, we're developing and attacking the pawn on e5, as well as threatening some moves like knight b4 or knight d4 later. After d4, we go knight b4, and now here already there are no real good moves to stop, to defend on c2, rather than playing queen d1, and it's already a tough move to find here for white. So c3, first white wants to stop the knight jumps to b4 and d4, and then wants to play for d4. We go for bishop e7, continue development. Now d4 is played. Everything looks brilliant, a very nice pawn structure for white, but we are going for f6, and we're just going to ask question to this pawn structure. In case pawn takes, we just take with the bishop b2, and after a short castle already we have many threats already. Bishop is ready to jump, rook can come to e8, and even if in case of the long castle, the pawn is hanging on a2, so it's already much better position for us. So e6, basically the only move for white, giving back the pawn, bishop e6, and yeah, position is around equal, while we have more development for now, and it's going again to be tough for white to finish the development in the next moves. The Vienna Gambit, the other move which we're talking, so yes, here basically queen went to f4, now knight c6, and now knight f3 in this position. Basically the most human move, developing the knight, but already white has to be really careful, because after bishop e7, there are already threats to attack the queen on f4. For example, in case of bishop e2, here it was actually played in one of the games, and after g5, queen g3, h5, white could get already in the trouble, since after h3, black could go with f5, getting an enormous space advantage on the king side and preparing a very dangerous attack with, of course, big initiative. Bishop b5, trying to block and trying to pin our knight, so castle. In case of the castle, knight b4, and again asking question to the pawn on c2, knight e1, and then f6, opening up the f file, and yeah, basically the white's pieces are a bit too awkward. Bishop c6, pretty much not an easy move to make, but it's the correct way to for white to continue. Bishop c6, castle, and f6. We're opening up the position for our bishops and for the rook. So d4, white is trying to defend, fe, and after queen takes, we have queen d7. There are many ideas in this position, and we can already even consider taking on f3 and winning the pawn on d4, but also we have many other ideas to improve and create attack against the king. So yeah, that's why probably first we will try to create some play, and later if we cannot find anything, then we can of course always take a pawn. So now we go to the Vienna game with a knight f3. So basically it starts with this order, so no gambit but game. It means g3, it's a Mises variation, and white would like to just continue to develop the pieces without any kind of theory, and just normal developing move just to get the game without really claiming something. We go for bishop c5, also we're developing the piece, and we want to go later for c6, d5 push. So bishop g2, castle, knight f3, and now we're already going for d5. Since we can do it and it's working out, we go for it. So here if knight takes on e5, That was the main problem of this, or main question rather. We're taking on e4, and basically knight on e5 is pretty loose. And if pawn takes on d5, we go for e4. That was the whole point of it. Now, where does the knight go? If knight goes to g5, the problem is that bishop g4, we're already attacking the queen. And after knight e2, we have rook e8. We're defending the pawn on e4, and it's very difficult to make some moves for white. h3, bishop e2, queen e2, and now h6. Attacking the knight. Knight is forced to take. There is only square. And after knight takes, bishop takes f5. Basically, we're just winning a piece. If knight goes back to g1, it's not really ideal square, but not much alternatives. c6, now we're also, first of all, we threaten to take here on with the pawn to get very nice center. But in case white is taking on c6, we go queen d4. We're opening up the position and we're ready to attack. Queen e2 is the only defensive move. And now we're bringing the knight with a tempo by taking the pawn. And basically, again, very tough position for white, not easy to develop. In case of d4, basically, white wants to just speed up the development as fast as possible. We play bishop b4, now pinning the knight. And after dc, knight c6, the pawn on d4 is a target. Knight g2, trying to defend it, but after bishop g4, there are simply too many pins and too many problems in the position. Castle, bishop c3, pawn takes, and queen c8. There is a huge positional compensation for the pawn, and we just prevented the h3 move. And okay, we can at some moment also go for knights to c4 or d5, and there are some weak pawns on the queen side for white. So now we're going into position where white goes for the knight g2. It's kind of the main line. So basically white wants to finish the development and see later and see later how to continue the game. So c6, again, we still want to go for d5. d4, white is first one to break the center, but it's not really great position when you do it in the king with the king in the center, since after ed, knight d5, we are ready to open up the position. ed5, and now bishop g4 attacking the queen. Knight d comes to e2, and now after knight d5 trades happen. Queen d5, knight d7. The position is very difficult. King cannot really castle and staying in the center. We're down a pawn, but we're definitely having a big compensation in the development and activity of the pieces. If white is castling and not going for any d4, we are ready to play d5 ourselves. And after d3, it's a bit too passive because now we can take on e4. Knight takes, and after pawn takes, basically this bishop is getting blocked, and we're playing here a5, stopping any kind of ideas. Okay, if you also want to keep the queens, you can play queen first, bring queen to e7 or c7, and then to play a5. But a5 is definitely must be played to stop any kind of threats from white to kick our bishop. Pawn takes on d5. Now we take on d5 as well, and d4. Now white is trying to break with the d4, but after ed, knight d4, we have bishop g4. This is pretty much the key move, because here, if white is playing f3, we're just bringing the bishop back, and well, the bishop of white on g2 is just becoming very bad. So queen d3, and it's basically another very important move. And now we're going to give up the bishop pair with the idea of developing our pieces and speed up the development. So now knight c6, and in case of queen a4, we have d4 already, and there is no need to wait for anything. Knight e4 take, trade happens, now rook e8 with the tempo. Basically, with every move, we're just developing and we are improving, but white is not much. In case of queen f4, then, well, d4 is the move which white wants us to make, so that's why we are not going for it, because after knight e4, knight takes, white would take our bishop on g4. So for that reason, we have to play queen d7, defending the bishop, also stopping ideas of h3, getting ready to trade the bishops at some moment on g2. So yeah, many ideas. Bishop d2, rook f to d8, rook f to e1, and now rook a to c8 has been played. We are ready to play h6 next, and yeah, then at some moment we can go for d4. Then it's not going to be an issue any longer, since our bishop is defended on g4. Now we are moving to the King's Gambit, well, King's Gambit is starting with e4, e5, and f4. Basically, the main idea of King's Gambit is for us to take and to grab the center as fast as possible. There are, of course, some ideas from which black can use, considering that the f pawn was pushed, so the dark squares are getting weaker, and for that reason, there could be ideas of the check at some moment on h4. So we're accepting the gambit, and after bishop c4, we're going knight f6. This is the main line for black, and yeah, it's pretty much working well. We are attacking the pawn on e4. White has to do something. In case of e5, we're going for d5, of course. Almost all the time, e5 is met by d5, unless the bishop is on e7. So in case of knight c3, defending the pawn, defending the d5 square, we go bishop b4. Very logical move. We put pressure on the knight, and we're getting ready to take on e4 at some moment or push for d5. If knight goes to e2, we go d5 immediately, because after ed, we have f3, super nice move. We're just weakening a whole position of white. And also, let's not forget, we were starting with extra pawn, so that's why we can give even 2 pawns and just get good position. Here, after knight b7, basically we achieved something what white wanted to achieve in the King's Gambit, sacrificed the pawn and got a lead in the development. d3 would be a bit strange, but this move actually is popular in online games. Here we just castle, and yeah, in the next move we are ready to go for d5 because of the spin. So e5 is the other move which white can try to play here. Here we again go for d5. In case white takes our knight, we grab the bishop. And if white takes on g7, of course, rook g8, we have to play queen e2 check. And now we play bishop e6, blocking our check, knight f3, knight c6, castle, and rook g7. So basically, we have a bishop pair advantage right now. Also, we have the g file in this position, and we're going to bring our queen out and castle long, and we would be very close to winning this game. In case of bishop b3, when bishop comes back, we have a very nice move, knight e4. The main idea is that we are threatening already to go with the queen h4. Since when knight is coming to e4, queen h4 is very nice. So knight f3, now c6, we're defending our pawn on d5. And we're just so much better here. Bishop b5 is basically critical move in this line. And we have to go for knight f to d7. It's a very rare move, but it's working actually pretty well. And there are pretty many like messy lines and complicated, but it's actually a good move. So knight d5, we go back with the bishop to a5 with the idea again to bring the queen to h4. And also c6 is another fork threat. Knight takes on f4, and after c6, we're just going to gain back the pawn and get a comfortable position. So bishop e2, knight e5, c3, and after c5, basically we're not allowing the d4 push, and we're going to continue with knight b, c6, or castle in the next move and have a pretty much good position. So the King's Gambit, the knight f3 move. So this is like the main move. This is the most popular one. The most important thing is that white is stopping the idea of knight h4. We play bishop e7. We go for a Cunningham defense. This is looks like a pretty modest move, but actually we have very nice ideas of going for bishop h4 checking, and also at the same time we can still consider where we want to put our knight, on f6 or not. So we will see depending on the opponent's move. In case of d4, bishop h4. In case of knight c3, bishop h4. But in case of bishop c4, here we change plans because bishop h4 would not make sense, and king would go to f1 square. And it would be completely fine for white, so we would just lose time with that. So that's why we play knight f6. We're switching plans, and yeah, we are attacking the pawn on e4. In case of d3, d5 is already possible, very strong move, ed5, knight d5, and it's a very nice position for black. Basically, yeah, we are just defending the pawn also on f4 with the knight, and if white would like to take the pawn, white would have to trade its light squared bishop, which is very important and very strong. Knight c3 is pretty common, but it's pretty bad. So here we can go for knight e4. This is the main trick where after knight takes on e5, we have a d5 trick with d5 fork. So bishop f7, white is trying in some way to do something, but after king f7, if knight takes on e4, we have rook f8 already, and we are ready to kind of artificially castle. So knight e5 is the only try, so that we don't let the rook out to f8, and after knight e4, d6, we are precisely targeting every of the knights out, and after knight c6, d4, white is attacking the pawn on f4, and pretty typical move in this chapter is g5. We're not weakening our king, no, because we're having a bishop pair, and bishops are going to be perfect on f5 and f6. Well, we will have this pawn structure with defense, and king can be somewhere on g7. So it's just going to be a great position, definitely. The next move is e5. This is one of the rare cases where we actually cannot reply with the d5 to this move, because we're going to have issues since two pieces are hanging, and then later also queen is hanging. So knight e4, we have to jump forward, and also we are again introducing a threat of bishop coming to h4. d3, white is attacking, and here, of course, if we play bishop h4 after king e2, knight f2, it feels like we're winning material, but after queen d2, knight h1, queen f4, we're just actually going to get a very bad position, and white sacrificed the whole rook, but meanwhile attacking us. So d5 has to be played. We have to remember to this move. So main idea is that, of course, to take on d6 if white is taking. So bishop b3, bishop h4, and after king f1. Here, again, knight f2 would be pretty bad, because after queen e1 takes, queen will take our bishop, and we're just getting a lost position in the endgame. So knight c5, the last very important move, attacking the bishop. So not to be tricked, and after bishop f4, knight takes b3, ab, and castle. And basically, if white is going to allow, we will retreat with the bishop to e7, but we're going to continue the play like with knight c6 and bishop g4. In case of the short castle, this is the main move so far. So d5, we're going for it again. We're defending the knight, we're developing the bishop, and we're ready to take on d6 with the pawn. With the knight. In case of bishop b3, then we go knight c5 to here d4, attacking our knight, but we are already ready to trade the knight for the bishop, obviously. And after g5, again, we are defending the pawn and getting this very nice pawn structure on the queen-king side. After ed, we're taking back with the knight, bishop b3, and knight c6. Yeah, basically, very precise move right now. Position is very good, and it's good to keep options and not just to castle so quickly. So after d4, we can play g5, and we can also consider castling here, long or short. It just depends how we want to continue. So that was this. And now we're moving from the king's gambit to the reversed Philidor with bishop e2. When does it happen? So after e4, e5, knight f3 is being played, attacking the pawn on e5. We're always replying with c6, with knight c6 here. And here we can get into many openings, but the line which we're currently going to discuss, the reversed Philidor, is starting with a d3. The main point of this opening is to get some playable position, no theory, but just to get a position and play a game. It's actually also a favorite move of Grandmaster Bahadur Jabava. So so we are going for knight f6. Since white is not putting any pressure on us, we can already start having our own dreams of pushing d4. And after bishop e2, actually we're going to play the reversed Philidor, basically similar how white is playing it. For example, if white is white is taking on d5, we're just taking on d5. It's already an Antoshin variation of the Philidor defense, but we are just one tempo down, which is not so bad actually. Castle, and now bishop d6. This is very important move. So maybe playing bishop e7 or bishop c5 would be more logical, but in this case, actually, bishop d6 is a very solid move. We're defending the pawn on e5 because in that way, we're eliminating white from the opportunities, and later if white is attacking our pawn with a rook, it's already going to be overprotected and all good. So rook e1, now we castle, and yeah, basically we cannot really complain. We have a slight advantage due to the central pawn in and more space. So yeah, just great position for black. Knight bd2, this is a standard move which white is playing. Here we go for bishop c5, and yeah, just bringing out the piece. So in case of c3, a5, we are not never allowing the b4 push. In case of the castle, then c3 again with the same idea. Of course, a5, we're not letting any b4 moves. And if white is playing here very quickly, wants to go for b4, white can get in trouble after a5. So now b4 is going to be always met by en passant. So that's why white has to be very slow, playing b3 first, and then go with a3 and b4. So now bishop g4. Now already we are putting pressure on the knight on f3, and some threats of some ideas of pushing d4 to create weaknesses on the dark squares are there, since white played this b3 weakening move. So bishop b2, bishop takes. So of course knight couldn't take because of the problem on e4. Bishop takes, and now d4. So basically bishop on f3 is pretty bad, and we're weakening the dark squares. c4, white wants to keep the position close, but here comes the move a4, and here white cannot really go forward, and yeah, cannot really let us take. So yeah, after take, we are just playing queen e7, and strategically already getting a winning position because of the pawns on the a file. So now we're getting into the reversed Philidor with the bishop on g2. So white is going for the g3 move. We go d5. There is no reason not to play it. After knight bd2, this is pretty bad because here we are already we already can close a diagonal of the bishop. So yeah, we're getting already in good position. Bishop c5, and bishop is going to be pretty bad on g2. In case of e takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop g2, this is pretty much the standard position of white. And after and here we go for bishop d6. So similar move as against bishop on e2. So first of all, we want to develop our bishop. And secondly, we don't want any issues later in the game with the pawn on e6, on e5. So that's why we develop and defend the pawn at the same time, getting very solid positions after castle. Rook e1, which is putting some pressure, but our pawn is already defended, so we can play bishop f5. Placing bishop on e6 would maybe be faced by knight g5, and placing the bishop on g4 by h3, so bishop on f5 is actually standing on the perfect square. a3, white wants to go for b4, so we stop it by playing a5. Knight b2, knight queen d7, and after knight c4, rook f2 e8, we're basically defending on e5, and yeah, we're just, again, having a slight advantage due to the more space in the center, and just great position here as black. So now we're moving to the Ponziani opening. It starts with knight f3, knight c6, and c3. So what white wants to do is white wants to build up the center with very strong pawns. So after d4, that after take, that white would take recapture with the pawn, and 2 pawns would be in the center. So that's why we have to first challenge, and many times when we go for when white goes for the c3 move, we go for the d5, since knight cannot jump on c3 and challenge our queen. After e d5, queen d5, d4, and bishop f5, we already discussed this as a second move of the c3. So bishop b5, it's just not a good line because the game is getting very sharp, and yeah, black of course has to know what to do, but it's not so good for white, because here we have the take on e4, and after knight e5 we have a very beautiful move. Of course queen d5 is also great, but queen g5 is even better, and we're just winning this one. So in case of d4, we're taking on g2. There is already a threat on h1, rook f1, and bishop d6. So now the first key move of the line. So we're not afraid of knight takes on c6, since after knight takes we have bishop d7. Very nice move. We are pinning the bishop. And after queen a6 is not even attacking the bishop because of the pin, but simply white cannot really move here. And in the next move, we are ready to play knight e7 or rook c8 in order to threaten already to take some piece. Bishop c6 happens, then it's pretty bad because after bc, bc queen a4, here, bc queen a4, then we can go queen g2, not caring about this, and yeah, just not going to help white anything because we're going to eat their queen rook as well. If knight takes on c6, it's pretty easy. Queen takes b5, knight goes back to d4, and after that we return back to g5, attacking the pawn on g2. So g3 is happening, but after bishop g4, the position is pretty much hopeless for white. Queen a4, trying to put pressure immediately, but then we're just taking on g2 again, attacking the knight, the rook. After bishop takes c6, bc, queen c6, we are going king d8, and now after rook f1, bishop h3, attacking the rook on f1. Queen a8, king a7, yeah. In case of knight c6, we are just getting into pretty funny line because after king f6, some checks are coming. Here, very important that we are not stepping on the dark squares because the pawn would get open. So king h5 is pretty important that we're getting into this very good square. After king d1, white's king is trying to run away, but okay, we are taking the rook. And we are having this very nice bishop f5 with the idea of the discovered check with e3. After knight c6, king f6, queen d8, king g6, some checks are incoming. Again, king is going on the light squares so that there is no d3 move, very important, queen a8. And now after e3, basically d3 and e2, we are ready to kind of promote and we are winning. And well, if white is going for queen d5, the main idea is to go for the f7 square. Of course, we go queen f6, and here the point is that after queen f7, we can even take the knight on e5, and our knight is in the center, our king is in the center, but queen f8, queen d3, and yeah, basically just getting a checkmate in a few moves. Knight d7, so here we have to take the knight, and after queen takes, bishop d6, so basically cutting the protection of the d3 square, and yeah, the queen d8, king g6, there are no more checks, and we are ready to play for h5, king h7, and knight f6, so that rook is protected on h8, and meanwhile we're attacking the white's king, and all the pieces of white are stuck on the queen side. So now we're getting into the Ponziani with queen a4. So here, queen a4, this is not only attacking the pawn on e5 because of the pin, but also protecting the e4 pawn. So here we are going for the Caro variation. It's a pawn sacrifice with bishop d7. So the main idea is, okay, first of all, if bishop b6 is played, a6, we are just kicking out the bishop. But in case white is taking on d5 with the pawn, we're jumping with knight to d4 and attacking the queen at the same time. Queen d1 going back is the only move pretty much. Knight f3, queen f3, and here knight f6. Up to this moment, it's basically forced variation, and here white already has some options to go. So after c4, white is defending the pawn on d5. Here we go bishop c5 already, challenging the pawn on f2, and also very good square for developing for the bishop. Knight c3 castle, and now basically, yeah, we are having already different ideas. c6 would be positional idea of trying to break the pawn chain in the center, but of course first like to finish the development. And we could also play knight g4 to attack the pawn on f2. In case of bishop e2, basically white is ready to castle here, so we have to be fast and go knight g4. Idea is targeting, of course, the pawn on f2, since after castle, f5, d3, and here we go for a5. The thing, oops, sorry. The thing is that the rook now can join from the 6th rank to the game, and after h3, queen h4, we are sacrificing a knight, and yeah, very, very interesting idea also from black. So here d3, basically white is opening the diagonal for the bishop and yeah, making this e4 move also very difficult for us, which we normally want to do. c6, we're trying to break, and very typical idea of including the queen into the game via the a5 square. Bishop g5, trying to pin and build pressure on the f6 square. So now queen b6, we're removing our queen and not caring about f6 at all, since there are issues for white on b2 and f2. Queen a2 coming back to defend the pawn on b2, and after knight g4, the position is pretty dangerous for white because there is a big already issue on f2 and we're already clearly better. If bishop goes to e2, so basically it highlights that white wants to castle as quickly as possible. We take on d5. If knight takes, we just take queen d5 and bishop b5. This is a problem. Now white cannot really castle bishop d2. We take and queen c7. In the next moves, we will have bishop coming to c6, rook coming to d8, and yeah, we're just getting we are getting a big compensation for the pawn. So after cd, bishop g4, black is just winning back the pawn with a very good position. Take. If knight takes on d2, we just take on d5. And if king takes, here, taking on d5 would be a mistake, since after knight d5, queen d5, bishop h6 is a very nice move, and now we're going to lose our exchange. So we have to play bishop d4 here, because we have actually time to recover the pawn. We shouldn't really rush. We can play queen b6, rook a c8, and to put more pressure on white in this position. So e4, e5. So now we are getting again to this Caro variation, the Ponziani. And in this position, white goes bishop c4. This is by far the main move. And the point is that white is defending the pawn on d4, d5 with the bishop and ready to finish the development by castling. Here we play b5, very logical move, attacking the bishop. Bishop goes back to b3. Now we have e4. Now we are attacking the queen on f3. If queen goes to g3, here we have bishop d6 and attacking the queen, not caring about the g7 problem, since after queen takes, rook g8, we can grab on the g2 and we're just getting completely winning position already. After queen e2, we have bishop d6. We're continuing the normal way of the developing, and the bishops are actually going to be very strong on this diagonal, and it's all only for the pawn. After d3, white is trying to finish the development, also targeting our pawn on e4. We castle, pawn takes, and after bishop g4, we're causing already some issues while white's king is still in the center. f3, now knight g4, knight e4, sorry, very nice sacrificing move, but actually nothing is hanging because there is a rook e8, and yeah, big issues for white. So here, for example, bishop e3, rook e8, and yeah, very dangerous attack. If white is going for castle, not doing anything here, we also castle as well. d3 and bishop g4, attacking the queen, intermediate move. Now, queen e3, rook e8, we're bringing the queen to rook to x-ray the queen, and basically we're just getting a huge activity of the pieces, and white has some troubles. Bishop on b3 is not working, just very bad due to the pawn on d5. So yeah, just great position for us, great activity of the pieces. d4 is a possible move. So now white is trying to finish the development with the queen side, bringing the bishop out to g5 and making it very quickly with the d4 move. We castle, we don't take en passant, of course. Now bishop g5, we're attacking the bishop goes away. Now a5, now we threaten to go for the a4. If white goes a4 themselves, and we are playing, if we're taking on a4, first of all, then there is an issue after after bishop takes on f6, queen takes, and bishop a4. It's not really clear, but first we include the g5 move, attacking the bishop. Bishop has to go back, and now we take on a4. So now it's actually pretty much clear everything, and we're getting very good position. So a3, white is trying to keep the pawn for a while. So we go for rook e8, already x-raying at some moment on the e file. After castle, we go a4, and now bishop is on a2. Basically, is the only function of the bishop is to defend the pawn on on d5, and the white's position is, I mean, at least we have the compensation for the pawn, but I would prefer black here. That was it for the quick starter. Thank you so much for studying with me, and I wish you also best of luck in the studying of other chapters. So see you there in the next chapter.